Hello, folks. We're back again today, and we're very excited to be here. We've got myself, Garrett French, we've got Eric Ward, and Shari Thurow. We're going to be talking to you today about site navigation and how it relates to link-worthy content. Um, Shari, can you walk us through the table of contents? Can anybody hear
Sure,
me? Oh, good. I didn't know.
I can hear you.
Good. I wasn't sure. I was like, am I on mute? Yeah, Sherry. Yeah, please walk us through what are we talking about? What's our overview for today?
Well, first of all, we're going to introduce ourselves. We'll just do some quick introductions because some of you might not have ever met us, so I'm more than happy to introduce ourselves. We're going to overview some really important course concepts and establish a common vocabulary, because in order for us to have effective communication, we need to use a common vocabulary. So we'll show you some terms and definitions that we commonly use in site navigation, information architecture, and link development. And then we're going to go over the what, where, why, who, and whens and hows of digital content assets. And at the end, we'll have time for questions and answers. So the goals, like I said, what is a digital content asset? Who do we create them for, and why do we create them? Where do we place them, and where do we place them on a website? And I love Eric Ward's comment that one of the goals of link building is to reduce the friction of people trying to accomplish their goals on your website. So as we go through this, we're also going to tell you how to really enhance the user experience.
And
So,
folks, Sherry, I'm going to interrupt because I'm so excited about this webinar today. It's because this is an area of discussion that is so painfully needed in the SEO and marketing space. So often we'll start a project on the Citation Lab side. We'll start an agency project, and we're just bolting on content. We are just kind of throwing it up willy-nilly, and it's almost an afterthought. It's often an afterthought, and this is putting it's a crazy idea, but putting the thought first is it's just really astounding and exciting to be able to work. Eric and I have had a blast working with Shari and learning from Shari. This is a killer webinar. So okay. I'm done.
And so we have some little things, little symbols for you. Anytime you see the green with the check mark, it means this is a good idea. Do what this website did. We love it. You see the white X in red. Don't do that. Bad idea. Woe to you if you've done it. And anytime you see an exclamation point, it's really important, and it's critical for you to remember it. So here are our introductions. This is Garrett French, and for those of you who don't know, Garrett French and I met because when he worked at Web Pro News, he was my editor.
I got to be your editor. It was Shari tells this story all the time, but I don't think I did that much. But that is where we met, 2002 maybe, way back when.
So go ahead and tell people who don't know you who you are and what you do.
Folks, I run the Citation Labs agency, do everything from tool design, do strategy design, have the link prospector tool, the broken link builder tool, co-citation tool, and with Eric wrote the ultimate guide to link building, and I write for Search Engine Land as often as I'm able, and get to work with incredible folks like Eric and Shari doing webinars like this. Who I think Eric's next in this sequence. Yeah, Mr. Ward. Okay, so Eric is a mentor of mine, like Shari. Eric was an unknowing mentor. Eric, I'm gonna let you introduce yourself in just a second. But I remember the day when I actually was reading Search Marketing Standard. I don't know if anybody remembers this print publication, but Eric had an article in there and had some incredible ideas, and where he unlocked advanced operator prospecting for me. Eric is absolutely, hands down, my link building mentor. Eric, go ahead and introduce yourself, though.
Man, I appreciate that you said that.
Somebody, at least
Well,
besides your
you
mom,
know,
read
it's
that
like
article.
I work alone in a little office above a garage for 20 years at the foothills of the Smoky Mountains. So it's not like I get a whole lot of. It's not where I live is not exactly a hotbed of internet activity.
But
So
Carl Penapier is his neighbor.
And she's a famous librarian, and actually the reason I have this company is because in grad school I took her class, and the grade in her class, it was entrepreneurship in the information profession, and your goal and your grade was based upon coming up with a fictitious business that in some way was involved in the information industry. Now this is 1993. So because the web fascinated me and was just starting then, I mean the web was still text-based. It was Lynx, which is the very first text-based web browser that was actually written by Tim Berners-Lee, who wrote the hypertext protocol. But anyway, long story short, my business came about because I had to create a fictitious business for a grade, and then about halfway through that process I started thinking, this actually might work.
Right.
So I went to a local ISP.
Nonfiction.
Yeah, I went to an ISP in Knoxville and said, this is what I think of my idea. It's like when these websites launch, nobody knows they exist. They're just on a hard drive somewhere. Like, who makes sure they get listed at Yahoo? Who makes sure they get submitted to InfoSeek and Lycos and WebCrawler and Hotbot and Lycos Top 5% and all of these ancient places where you used to go to get publicity for your websites back then? And that ISP said, well, we don't have anybody that does that, and if you'll do that, we'll pay you to do it. And that was for me when I realized, oh my gosh, this is actually potentially legit. So 20 years later, you can kind of see from the bullet points. It embarrasses me to read these simply because the subtext of all of them means, man, this guy's old. But I'm not. That picture that you see up there is just 7 years ago, so I'm really not as old as you think. I don't even want to say what my background is, because actually I've got a new bullet point for Shari, and this is actually not a lie. I have analyzed roughly 16 million URLs over the course of my career. I did the math of all of the projects and all of the backlink analytics and the Excel spreadsheets, which I still have. I've analyzed 16 million URLs by hand over the course of 21 years, and my metrics for my analysis of the quality of those URLs is what I call my gut. My algorithm is in my gut. It's what comes from actually looking at that many pages over this many years. So I'm not even going to say anything more about my background other than to say I publish a newsletter that will help you do better on the web than you're currently doing. And I still, for a handful of clients, actually do a little bit of outreach. But for the most part, I develop strategies, create backlink blueprints, and help companies basically get the maximum out of their website that they had hoped to when they got on this amazing thing called the web. So I'm just happy to be here. And
so about that newsletter, I would have asked you for a discount on it, but it's only $8 a month. So I just decided not to. It's an incredible, insane bargain at $8 a month.
It's going to 15 next year. It's going to be grandfathered in. If you're in at $8, if you're in at $8, you keep it at $8. But I've had so many people tell me, man, raise the price on that. Especially as I've started to add videos and webinars and other things in there. They're like, nobody's going to think it's worth it at $8. You need to raise the price. So I probably will do that next year. But anyway, that's a whole side story. I'm excited to do this webinar with you guys simply because I think both of you all, in fact, the three of us need to start a company because we each come at this from three different areas of expertise, and there are people, and that's something we need to talk about after this webinar because I think Shari, Garrett, and Eric Inc. needs to happen.
Let me talk about Shari for a minute and why I was so excited. So this is her brainchild. This webinar and this meeting of the minds is her brainchild. She saw that there was a gap between the folks dreaming up, like Eric and I in our garages and attics, dreaming up linkable assets, and then the gap is between that asset and actual usability and site utility. Shari is just a master of site usability and navigation. I've known her for close on to 15 years now. Actually got to meet her in real life at a conference years ago, and I'm absolutely just a student of Shari's every day, and she's been blowing my mind since we started discussions like 2 or 3 months ago on this project. But Shari, would you talk a little bit, tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
Yes, and any of you who've been on Twitter have learned that Eric Ward is my professor. He has been teaching me how to be a badass, and apparently I'm doing a good job being his student, so I thank you for that, Eric. Shari is what I would call a rare breed. I have a background in medical genetics and Asian studies, particularly Japan and Asian religions, and my PhD work is actually in human and computer interaction. So I look at things from a technical perspective as well as a very human perspective, and search is right in there. Search is something that you have to understand humans as well as understanding technology. And I love that Eric mentioned all those search engines. And there's a reason also I'm glad Eric mentioned he's been doing this for 21 years and I've been doing this for 20 years, that link development was an online marketing strategy long before Google came into existence. And a lot of things that Eric and I were doing back in 1994 and 1995 still apply. And we are going to show you some of those principles today, and I hope you get a lot out of what we're going to talk about. So let's start with something simple and a concept that we all have possibly encountered, and that's riding an elevator. How many of you have all ridden in an elevator?
I've ridden in an elevator.
Okay, I have too, and I'm going to tell you something interesting, is that the elevators that you're about to see are elevators that I was actually in the day my niece, Metallica, was born on New Year's Day. Her name is Metallica. We call her Tally, and I love that I have a niece named Metallica. So here is a genuine scenario, because Eric, Garrett, and I all tend to go to conferences. So we're in this hotel to attend a conference. Garrett's on the 10th floor, Eric's on the 15th floor, I'm on the 12th floor, and as I've had a knee replacement, whenever I go to a hotel, one of the first things I do is get to the gym to exercise my knee and make sure it's nice and flexible. And it is true, my metal knee is named Larry, and the other metal knee that I'm eventually going to get is going to be named Mo. So,
how about
I don't want to ask what you're going to name Curly. I'm sorry.
Now, we all now have a first live occurrence of Eric teaching me to be a badass. Isn't that great? His timing is impeccable. I'm not telling you who I'm naming Curly.
Okay.
So let's go back to the elevator. All of us to do something. I need to go work out because Larry is all stiff. Eric needs to share the thumb drive to prepare questions for the event, because at all these conferences, believe me, people walk up to Eric and ask him questions. And Garrett and I also have something in common. We accidentally leave our glasses in our car. So how do we get to the workout room? How do we get our thumbnail drive, and how do we get to our car? We get in an elevator. So we know that this hotel has at least 16 places where they can place content assets, such as an elevator, not an elevator, such as a workout room. And let's see how the hotel might handle some of these content assets and the navigation to the different places. So these are the tasks that we three have to do. So here's the elevator. Let's say we need to go to the 7th floor. I'm going to ask Eric, what do you expect to see? Let's say you press the number 7. What do you expect to see when the doors open?
Unless I have some other secondary navigation in the form of signage in that elevator, my hunch is that the only things I'm going to see on the 7th floor of any hotel are going to be signs that tell me which rooms are where, and then a sign that tells me where the ice machine is.
Okay, exactly. This is pretty normal. Do you expect to hear anything?
No. Well, I might hear 7th floor,
Ding.
Ding,
Or
exactly.
ding.
Visually, the number 7 might light up.
And if there's, and maybe a TV screen showing CNN rather than something actually helpful.
Exactly. Okay, so that's our mental model. When an elevator door opens, we expect to see some kind of image or hear some kind of sound that tells us where we're going and have we arrived. So that's pressing the number 7. So let's say we need to go to the lobby because we need to ask the concierge where the conference is being held. Garrett, what would you do and what would you expect to see after pressing the letter L?
I would press the button. I would expect the button to light up. I would expect the elevator to descend and a ding and open up onto the lobby. Well, I would hope it would be the lobby. Sometimes those elevators are way far away from the lobby, so I might have to look for a lobby sign is probably what I would expect to look for, unless it was, you know, the elevator was close to the lobby, and then I would expect to see the lobby.
Okay. If you opened the door and you saw this, would you think you were in the lobby?
Yes, I would.
Okay. That is pretty much what everybody expects. Okay. Now, here is a different elevator. What button would you press to go to the lobby?
Wait, is this a elevator from where English is the first language of the country?
This is an elevator from the United States.
Whoa.
And you need to go to the lobby because you want some coffee.
I'm going to have to take Garrett, I'm going to have to take a wild guess and say G, meaning ground, like ground floor, because I'm assuming a lobby's typically on the ground floor. I'm going to have to take a guess at it. G,
okay.
Meaning guess, basically.
B would be basement, right? So maybe atrium? Atrium? Is that a thing in hotels?
Or R for rotunda. That's the thing. It's like, in other words, I'm not sure.
Exactly. And if you were in Europe, the B would be the lobby, but this is the United States. Okay, so the task is to go to the lobby, thumb drive, get some coffee. What would happen if the doors opened and you saw this?
I'm not in the lobby. Or it's a minimalist lobby, maybe.
Exactly.
I'd also realize that they did a poor job of promoting this conference because nobody showed.
Exactly. Well, this happens all the time in elevators, and this elevator, ironically, I took the braille off, but when I did this usability test in this elevator, there was a person who actually read braille and told me that even the braille was wrong on this elevator. But most people pressed G in the United States, and they were wrong. Now, what do you think this happens? When do you think this happens on the web? Well, it happens all the time. So this elevator, boo, bad information sent. Now let's go back to the elevator where you have to go to hotel parking.
Oh man, it could be anywhere. I've been to hotels where the parking was up top. I've been to hotels where it was in the middle, where it was in the basement. So if I'm presented with that, I can. My assumption is going to be there's no way it's on a numeric floor, so I'm going to press L.
Right, exactly, and that's the lobby, and we've already seen that. So this isn't a very good elevator panel. So what do we know about this particular hotel? And by the way, these two elevator panels were in the elevators right next to each other.
Is this related to what you call information sent?
Yes. So what happened with these elevators is the scenario was very clear. I need to go to the lobby. I need to go to the 7th floor. I need to go to the parking garage. I need to go somewhere. And I lost the information sent. And if you lose information sent, you probably lose customers. So here is an example of information sent. Number 1, people typing keywords into a search engine. Number 2, search engines present search results, hopefully validating your information sent. If I clicked on the top link here, I expect to go to the cancer.gov homepage. All right, here's something we did at the previous webinar. It's called an expectancy test. It's a really good usability test that everybody can do, and I'll show you how to do it right now. Basically, you present a person in a usability test. You do one person at a time, and you ask them, what do you expect to see when you click on this link? And you don't show them the answer because everybody says, oh yeah, I expected to see that. Well, just so you know, if they expected to see it, they would have told you. What we're looking for is the user mental model. So I'm going to click lung cancer. Garrett and Eric, what do you expect to see when you click on lung cancer?
My expectation is to confirm that I'm in the right place after clicking that. I want to first of all see the words lung cancer, and I don't mean in the title tag up in the tab. I want to see the just as though at the top of your image number 3 there, I see National Cancer Institute in red. My hope is when I click lung cancer that I'm going to immediately be shown that I have arrived at the right place because I'm going to see something that says the words lung cancer, and then the subset of information will be like it says there, information about lung cancer, treatment, prevention, and causes.
Yes.
Okay, so those words are the information sent. What if you got this page?
I would assume that the poor guy who's the webmaster died of lung cancer.
Very good.
I'm sorry.
So I'm trying to prove a point here. That's exactly what happens in the elevators when you don't have a good site navigation and a good labeling system. Is you lose people. The number one reason that people abandon websites is they cannot find desired content. Now, just so you know, I use this as an example. When you click on lung cancer, you do get the right page.
I was going to ask Shirley to goodness, because they actually, I don't know if they're your client, but I actually handled their launch about 18 years ago for their very first site.
Oh, good for you. Peter Morville, a very, very outstanding, probably one of the best information architects in the world, architected this site, and he did an extraordinary job. So what we see here is a loss of information sent, and whenever we put digital content assets on the website, number one, we need to establish information sent. We need to establish aboutness. What is this document about? And as long as we can maintain information sent, you're good as gold. So here's the notes for the people who wanted to know how to do an expectancy test. And here are the links on how to do these usability tests. And now let's go into the definitions that we need to understand before we go to full scale into content assets.
Shari, can I ask you a quick question about expectancy tests? In your opinion, does that need to happen like during the wireframe? When do people need to do? Well, certainly anybody with an existing website can do an expectancy test to diagnose potential dead ends on their site. But what about like when you're creating the site up front? It's an expectancy test, I would still assume, is important even at the front end.
It is, and when we do expectancy tests, I have conducted thousands of usability tests. I've actually been, a lot of people don't know this, but I am actually a paid usability test participant for the web search engines because I am a user. So I've had to actually be a part of usability tests. Usability tests are best done before the site is made, so we tend to call it a formative test. You can do it on wireframes, you can do it on prototypes, you can do it on, if you use Photoshop, you can do it on a high fidelity prototype as well, and you can also do it on a current website to analyze what are people's mental models. So that is a big deal, is to understand your users' mental models, because whenever you create site navigation, it needs to be based on your user mental models, not the technical team's mental models. Is the technical team going to buy your products and services? Is your technical team going to add links to a site? Are they going to be the ones that are doing the site prospecting? No. Who's going to be the people that are going to actually use your site? Those are the people that you conduct usability tests with. So I'm using a lot of technical jargon. So again, I'm going to go through some technical words, make sure we have effective communication, and another word that should be really important is context. A friend of mine and one of the founders of the Information Architecture Institute said, content may be king, but context is the kingdom. So what are we going to talk about? Information architecture. Simply put, it's organizing, labeling, and connecting website content so that it's easy to use and easy to find. And usability guru Jacob Nielsen points out that 77% of task failure on websites is due to IA issues. What comes first, information architecture or site navigation? Information architecture comes first. After you establish information architecture, then you can set up site navigation. Information architects organize content in the following ways, and most of the time it's a combination of the above. And we're going to get into this because there's a common mistake that link builders make in information architecture, and I'm going to show you how to not do that and how to do it well. The scent of information, which Eric and Garrett and I have been talking about, consists of textual and graphical cues that communicate where am I in the right place, where can I go, and how can I get there. Think elevator. Where am I? I'm on the 7th floor. Am I in the right place? How do you know you're on the 7th floor? The 7 lights up, you hear a ding, the door is open, and there's usually a visual indicator that you're on the 7th floor. Where can I go? The elevator. It has buttons. It tells you where you can go. You can go to the 8th floor. You can go to the lobby. And in this case, if you press G, you're not going to the ground floor. You're going to the garage. And how can I get there? All links must look clickable and look tappable and be tappable. And all things that aren't tappable should not look tappable and should not look linkable. So information sent is huge because you establish information sent, people click. You lose or diminish information sent, you lose clients, you use prospects, and you lose site visitors. We've been using the word mental model. All the mental model is a way people view something. And you'd be very surprised in usability tests and usability studies that your users do not think the same way you do. One of the most fun usability tests you can do is tests using children. My 2-year-old nephew knows how to use his Nabi tablet better than any adult that I've ever seen. But it's also as simple as an on-off switch. How do you turn on the light in your hotel room? Sometimes the light switch isn't even findable, and sometimes the link to your digital assets are also not findable. So you need to understand your users' mental models and understand where they expect to see those links. Link building is a part of search engine optimization, and the one thing that we want you to know about SEO is it's not optimizing for technology only. People who tend to optimize for search engine only tend to be search engine spammers. SEO is actually optimizing for people who use search engines. It's people who are going to add to cart. It's people who are going to sign up for webinars. It's people who are going to join Link Moses. And Eric knows that. So whenever he writes and he adds links to his site, he's doing it for his users. I do it for my users, and Garrett does too. Things SEO professionals are concerned with: labeling a site content so that it's easy to find. That includes titles. That includes page headings. It also includes URLs. A URL is a content label. Organizing websites so that it's easy to find. That's usually the job of an information architect. And that's sometimes a good thing, and sometimes it's a bad thing because a lot of people think they have information architecture skills and they don't. We want to make sure search engines have access to desired content. We want users to have access to desired content. We want to ensure search engines don't have access to undesirable content, An example of undesirable content is duplicate content. A lot of people don't realize that tagging on a blog leads to duplicate content delivery, and that's what search engines don't want. And in our case, earning a high number of high-quality links. We like to call this a quantity of quality. We need to create link-worthy digital content assets, optimize them properly, and put them in the right place so people will link to them. And this is something important, and I've used this slide for years and years and years, and I haven't had to change it in years and years and years, because all web crawlers index text and follow links. This is something that's been true about search engines since Tim Berners-Lee invented the web. It's been true when Eric started back in 1994. It's true when I started in 95. And I don't remember the year Garrett started, but he's been doing this for quite some time too. All search engines index text and follow links. That means you have to label your content and you have to provide easy access to that content. Links are and will continue to be ranking factors. Right now, social signals are not ranking factors, but accommodating searcher goals and behavior has been a ranking factor since the mid-1990s. So there's a human element as well as a technical element to SEO. So there's only 4 things you need to remember about SEO. Text, you got to put text on your pages that people can read. You've got to give easy access to that text. Think of link development as validation. People are validating that what you say about your content is true. And searcher behaviors. Does your website validate very well-known and established searcher behaviors? And our focus today is on link development and social signals. So remember, human factors and technology factors, and that's it for the common vocabulary. Please feel free to ask us any questions if you don't understand a term. So I'm going to turn this over to Garrett and Eric because they're going to talk about the what, who, and why of digital content and digital assets.
Thank you, Shari. Folks, this is why she's here. I hope you're taking notes. These slides will be available, and Shari's on Twitter. You can chase her down there and ask questions, and she has a library of content that she's written over the years and multiple books. Study her work. All right, folks.
Garrett,
yeah.
It's one quick comment on Shari too, because she won't say it herself. The concepts she's talking about are not just the difference between having a site that is pretty usable and helps accomplish things for the user versus awesome and perfectly architected. What Shari's talking about actually affects the bottom line. In other words, especially if you're talking about an e-commerce site. Yeah. Site architecture that frustrates people can generally, one of the outcomes of that is they bail on your site before they complete a transaction. Why? Absolutely. Because if you want to talk about wayfinding or information center, what have you. So these kind of concepts that Shari's talking about aren't just nice to haves. For many sites, they're the difference between being profitable and being incredibly profitable or being out of business.
Eric, and I want to further that before we jump into this, because this is a belief I have. I haven't done any studies, but I have the belief that when a potential linker, be they a links and resource page curator, be they a blogger, a reporter, a potential business partner, if they're looking at your content section of your website and they have a sense that it's very usable, very easy to navigate, and you're clearly communicating the depth of content on your website, these are all usability things. These are all navigation things. These are all information sent issues. I hope I'm using the right words. But these are all the types of cues that people look at on your website to determine whether you're legit, whether you are an authority. If you've got one little resource page that's buried on your website, orphaned, as Shari would call it, and there's really nothing supporting it. It's just kind of dangling out in the breeze, and there's no depth of authority. There's no depth of demonstration to the market or to the potential linker that you've been here for a while, you've been writing and thinking about this for a long time. If you're not communicating these things, you're not going to get as many links. People aren't going to trust your website as much. You haven't established authority. And I believe that a strong information architecture, solid navigation, clear relationships between a single linkable asset on your site and your other linkable assets, your other content assets, be they linkable or not, kind of showing the relationship between and where this specific document lives in your broader website. That all leads to someone having an easy yes when they link to you, because they're not
all of these things.
Shop.
Yeah, and the things you're talking about so much bleed over into the psychology of content, of design and content. In other words, a lot of these, a lot of the things you're discussing are like internal dialogues and feelings and questions people are asking themselves as they look at any given piece of content. Who created this? Can I trust this? Does this look like it got lifted? Are there typos here? Man, I mean, all of these things are little tiny things. It's almost like that. People are basically interviewing your content when they're considering linking to it. The same way that you are interviewing somebody in front of you for a position with your company. Now you're having an inner dialogue, even as you ask them, tell me where you see yourself in 5 years. You're having an inner dialogue with yourself about a bunch of other things about that candidate that you're not going to necessarily ever tell them about.
Or even be aware of it.
You know, it's similar with web content. There are so many what I would call subtle, psychological things that are taking place inside the potential link, the editor, writer, reporter's head that you can completely blow based upon how you present your content.
Yes, I think this is one of those, if you can get this aspect of your website right, not only is it going to impact the bottom line, as Eric mentioned, in terms of sales, but I really believe that if you have a clearly thought through information architecture, it's going to make people much more likely to link to you, to a single page of your content, not to mention an entire category of your content.
Yeah. And we should also add on top of link, share.
Sure.
You know, especially today. You know, in other words, the same things that make somebody consider wanting to take the time to actually link to somebody's content also play a part in somebody's desire about whether or not they're going to choose to click the tweet button, the Facebook like button, or share, or the LinkedIn, or what have you. These same things are at play, especially there where, you know, because people are known by the things that they tweet, whether or not they desire to be thought of as funny or a curator of quality information, etc. You know, the ability to earn those types of shares and links, etc., can really be influenced by the presentation of your content.
And this is why it was an easy yes for us, for Eric and I, to say, how do we work to connect these dots between what Shari knows and what we know? But we're going to talk a little bit about what we know now in terms of what makes content link-worthy. What is it? What can an asset be? Because I want us to think three-dimensionally about this, because it could be on your website, but it could also be expertise, right? It could be a blog post, an article. But I think one of the core missing kind of assets is simply internal expertise within a company. Now, I'm not saying this is something that's easy to unlock, but that's one of the kind of the most ignored, most commonly ignored sort of potentially linker valued assets at a website. So, you know, anything, a calculator. Eric, help me out. What are some things? What are some asset types that you can think of? Just
man, well, the chart that you've put right there is a great example with all of those bullet points. The types of digital content assets. Every single one of those represents its own potential to earn links and shares.
Right.
That doesn't mean that every website can take advantage of or create this everything
Sure.
that's presented
Yeah.
here. I mean, to each site, its own potential type of linkable assets. But everything I guess the only thing I'm not seeing here, and I may just be, no, you've already got it. You've got the quizzes, you've got the tests. Maybe one thing that isn't there that because we're talking so seriously about all this stuff. Sometimes the thing, remember what tends to get shared, and I'm not talking about necessarily hard links within like a blog post or an editorial link, but think about internet memes and how many of them often tend to have a humorous element to them. So even when you're talking about a very serious subject, I think people don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of humor. You know, the humor is it's a lot easier for people to share something that might make somebody smile than it is to make somebody frown.
Okay.
And this is just a partial list, everybody. Ebooks are another type of digital asset. And the goal, and we're showing you this because this is something that you should consider before your site is built. What kind of content assets does my site need in order to encourage link development, in order to encourage trust, and in order to encourage people coming to the site and doing what you want them to do, such as add to cart, signing up for a webinar, subscribing to an RSS feed.
And they also will allow, each of these has its own, what I would call ceiling or linking destiny, if you want to put that. If you have a slideshow on your website, that's great. Well, what about making sure you also upload it to SlideShare or some of the other places where you can send that? You've got infographics. What are those infographics about? Oh, you're an accountant and you've got an infographic about accounting? Well, go out there on the web and find out those people who, and I'm not talking about submitting the infographic of the day sites, which are a dime a dozen, but in other words, think of your white papers. Man, white paper submission campaigns can be gold if you identify the right places to put them. So not just necessarily looking at this from the standpoint of could somebody link to this on my site and have a link to my site, but where can I distribute this content in addition to my own site so that it has the chance to get exposure and attention and build my brand. So that's the other element of this is, yeah, it's great to create these so that you can potentially earn inbound links to it on your own domain, but also look at it from the standpoint of where can this also be distributed externally?
Absolutely.
So this is the what part, and just so you know, we have included links in here for you, and if we come up with any other kind of resource, we'll add it to the presentation, or we'll just send it out in the newsletter that follows. So next, we're going to look at why it's important. So
it's funny, but this is definitely an overlooked aspect of campaign design, and it's wonderful. I love having those sort of stumped moments when someone asks me why. Megan is amazing at this when we're thinking about, and she'll just throw. Ken McGaffin hit me with one of these today, just like, why are we doing this? And of course, the kind of the starting point is usually, well, to get links, but that's rarely enough of a why. Okay, so what else? Why are we creating an asset? Of course, bullet points. Obviously, we're trying to increase search engine traffic. Yes, we are trying to get more links, but we can also be increasing conversions. You can and should be designing campaigns for increasing conversions on your website, designing assets that are within the funnel of conversion, right? Top of funnel probably, but let's think about newsletter signups, as a conversion type, with, of course, with information, and all this also can serve to establish trust, credibility, and then enable people to have a positive experience on your site. I think this it's funny, but I really feel like, as someone from the SEO industry, kind of our first question rarely is, we rarely go beyond links, get links. And I think that's an important kind of extension to make. And Eric, would you talk about this a little bit? Because I know there was a time before Google when you were thinking beyond, obviously you're thinking about getting links, but you weren't thinking about links for their search engine impact, you're thinking about them for the brand impact that they could have, for the visibility impact.
Yeah, and I'll try to do it quick because I know I can tell we're probably going to go over because we've got a lot we want to get through, yeah. and it's 10 minutes till. But I was building links for 4 years for clients before there was a Google. Yeah. So I was never building links for search rank because there were the search engines of the day, Lycos, AltaVista, Hotbot, Web Crawler, InfoSeek, World Wide Web Worm, World Wide Web Wombat down in Australia, and some others I'm probably forgetting. I mean, there were about 10 search engines of the day that you would, and I get the best way really is actually to use a case study and try to do it in 30 seconds. One of my first clients here locally was Sea Ray Boats. They're based in Knoxville. I considered it a huge get because I was still taking graduate classes, and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I got Sea Ray Boats as a client. They were kind of ahead of their time. They were getting on the web in the early 90s, and they got on the web with PDF. They had a library of PDFs for people who had, the small ski boats and fishing boats, with a PDF library for maintenance. So, because a lot of skier, if you have a ski boat or a fishing boat, you're going to do your own maintenance rather than paying money or whatever. So they had these downloadable content assets. So now it's my job to go out and say to myself, okay, who's going to care about the fact that Sea Ray Boats has a website? Now again, Google doesn't exist yet. There are no search engines that care about links for the purposes of ranking this website. So my goal is simply to bring attention to the fact that Sea Ray has a website. Well, who would care that Sea Ray has a website? Yeah. So I go to the search engines of the day and I start doing searches on things like, boat
maintenance, maybe.
Boat maintenance, water skiing, pleasure boating, fishing boats, boat safety. And as I go through and I do that, I'm starting to notice things. It's like, first of all, I'm starting to notice things like, oh, wow, look at all of these marinas. Marinas are showing up because almost every single city that's on the water has a marina, or more than one marina, and they were starting to get on the web too. And what did those marina websites have? They would typically have useful links. Here's our hours of operations. Here we got a restaurant on site. Here much it costs for a boat slip, and useful links. And then on the useful links page would be links to boater safety, links to boating manufacturers. Bingo. And now Sea Ray Boats is for the first time online, so I send an email out to the people that run those websites at whatever, that Miami Biscayne Bay Marina. Hi, my name's Eric Ward. I'm working with Sea Ray Boats. They've just launched their website for the very first time. It has the following really cool information. I noticed on your marina website that you've got a collection of links, specifically a list of boating manufacturers. I am hoping that you might, as time permits, take a look at the Sea Ray site and add it to your list if you feel it's merited. And so I probably contacted 40 or 50 marina websites. The other thing I noticed when I was doing those searches, like on boater safety, is how many public libraries within those same areas where they were on coastal communities would have sections related to boater safety and would have sections related to boating or whatever. And sometimes there would be an opportunity for a link there as well. So anyway, now flash forward to when Google launches. And everybody's saying Google bases their rankings upon on links, and I'm thinking, oh geez, I've been doing work with all these clients for all these years. I better do some searches and see where my clients rank. And Sea Ray Boats was the very first one that I did, and I remember that I went to Google and I did a search on the phrase ski boats, and at position 1 was Sea Ray Boats, and I was like, holy crap! I don't know why, I don't know how, but whatever it was that I've been doing for the past 4 years was exactly what this so-called new search engine that studies links, or that looks at links, wanted. And that was, I didn't know anything about links at that point because no engines looked at them. It was at that day, it was on that moment that I realized, okay, I got to figure out what I did right. And that's when I hired, actually, a buddy of mine that worked at the University of Tennessee that knew Perl, wrote me the Perl script to do a link colon, because back then you could do link colon at Google and get every single freaking link that linked to any website. They hadn't turned the spigot off. They'd tell you whatever you wanted to know. And he dumped it into a CSV. I pulled that into Excel. I wrote a couple of macros, and it was then that I realized when I compared Sea Ray Boats that ranked first to all of the other sites that did not, because I'm trying to figure out what I did right, and what I did right was that none of those other websites had links from libraries or marinas, or one of the keys that I also found was universities that had ski clubs. I remember one of the places I got my very first link was a University of Georgia. Their ski club was called the Ski Dogs, and they had a section of useful water ski links with boating manufacturers. And I remember the day I sent the president of the University of Georgia Ski Dogs an email letting him know about Sea Ray. He put that link in there before the end of the day. So now I've got a
Back.
new link for, so now they've got a new link, not that all EDU, not that EDU is the, the gold standard, but just to make my point here is I ended up without understanding that I was doing so, creating the exact kind of backlink profile that Google wanted to see. Why? Because I wasn't building links for Google because I didn't know about Google and no engines cared about links. Therefore, I had to only do outreach to people who would frankly give a shit that C-Ray had a website. In other words, my thinking is, who will care that C-Ray is online? And then by going through that process, I identified the exact kind of sites that Google ultimately wanted to see as well. So it was completely by accident that this came about, and that took way longer to
No,
explain.
this is from a link building perspective, thinking about who is going to care. I think that's the number one sort of starting point when you're doing prospecting, and certainly when you're brainstorming what you're going to be doing, right? When you're designing your website, when you're thinking about topics, that's the time to start thinking about your linking audience as well, and that's who Eric is just absolutely incredible at sniffing out and thinking about, and that perfectly illustrates the finding that audience who cares about a URL, and really it's finding an audience who cares about a topic, and that's what that just does so well. So we're talking about audiences that linkers value. This is Citation Labs thinks we don't just think about who's going to value a topic, but who's going to value, because at this point there probably aren't as many people who are willing to link to boat manufacturers. There might be, but I think they get a lot of emails probably. So we are thinking a lot about who are the audiences that these linkers are who do these linkers create content for? Right.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. Today, if C-Ray Boats comes to me with I got to say, no, you know what? You've got the overwhelming majority of links that you need. You need to give away a boat for Christmas on the C-Ray Boats Christmas boat giveaway.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and that I can generate awareness for. So
absolutely.
You know, so it's very much things change over time.
It's a different era. Yeah. I still think, there might be some people who would, but then the impact you would have would probably be fairly low. But we do think so. So we've really looked at about 1.2 to 3 million link pages, like actual links and resource pages. Now we're still in the process of categorizing them, not by hand. We're sort of figuring out how to categorize. But some of the topic areas, what we call a linker valued audience, or a linkable topic, if you will, that we've discovered is stuff like seniors and disabilities, parenting. I mean, we've got, I think Megan wrote an article of about 600 different linker valued audiences. So oftentimes when we're designing a linkable piece of content that we know we can promote and earn links to, we're thinking about how do we intersect client topic with an audience that people that people value and create links pages for and blogs for. So they're not necessarily in funnel, right? So we do think about out of funnel content that can still be topically relevant, but then also there's the in funnel content for people who are definitely in your market, right? So not every piece of content is necessarily, when we're designing in our the no gravity space of trying to earn links, we're not necessarily creating content that is in funnel or thinking about our target market. But this is where this is why I'm always so intrigued by Shari's thinking, is because how do we justify writing something for seniors on a website that maybe their core market isn't seniors, or it isn't people with disabilities, or it isn't, and these are all great audiences to write for, whether you get links or not. right? Like making something relevant to seniors or figuring out a way to help seniors with what you're already doing or help people with disabilities with what you're already doing. These are great things to do. These are good. Pat yourself on the back. You're thinking about great audiences who are in need. This is good. But they're not necessarily your buying audience, right? So we're increasingly, folks are like, well, this is great. We got some great links to this content, but we're really wanting links to our content that will sell. And so we do, of course, have to think about the buying audience as well. But but within even your buying audiences, the names that they'll have will be different in the marketplace or on websites than what you call them internally. So your persona A may not actually be called persona A in the marketplace. They may have a different name for themselves. So there's still a lot of learning you can do about who your audience is, and more importantly, what your audience calls itself. And I feel like that's potentially related to a mental map. What is the audience's mental map of itself? What is their identity? But so often this goes unexamined as well. And even organizations that are content forward, content marketing, inbound marketing organizations, they're still thinking about their market as they define it, as opposed to how, like, the kind of the subset audiences within that market. So anyhow, just a long way of saying, think about your audience, think about your market as an audience, and then think about audiences who are not your market, and figure out how you can serve them. That's where links are going to come from. So this is the who.
And I'm going to add something, and this might amuse all of you. My mentor is Dr. Susan Weinshank, and she's known as the Brain Lady. And what she taught me was directly related to this. All humans have an old brain and a new brain. The new brain is at the front, the old brain's in the back. And men and women all react to the same basic things. Can I eat it? Will it eat me? Can I have sex with it? We don't have control over this. We just react. And there's a really good book called Eye Tracking Web Usability, and you can see what men look at and what women look at on web pages. And so when
sadly men find out the answer to number 3 by trial and error.
Which is true, and women, we do look at cleavage. It's about time for us to admit it. But what they're saying here, it's seniors and disabilities, people in need of information. That is, can I eat it? Will it eat me? Will it eat me involves safety. We all react to safety without thinking about it.
Security
so
and
a lot
safety,
of digital assets that you're creating are things that people react to with their old brain. So always remember, can I eat it? Will it eat me? Can I have sex with it? People all act the same way. So now we're going to get to...
I can sense another webinar coming. I think this could be really interesting.
Oh, yeah, I'd like that one.
We'll get Susan to join. She's hilarious. So we're going next to finding digital assets. We know who our target audience is. We know what kind of assets they want, because don't put videos on your site if your target audience doesn't want to look at videos.
Sure. If they're blind,
Yes. Or they just don't like, it's not videos that they want. If
right.
people want infographics, there are people who don't like infographics. Here's a pet peeve of mine. These infographics that are huge, the point of this infographic is to communicate information quickly and easily.
Digestible, yeah.
So just make sure that if you're doing infographics as a digital asset, that your target audience wants them and you've done your due diligence. And one of the things you should do before creating your content assets is finding them not only on your own site, but what do you see your competitors doing, not only on the web, but also in social media. So I'm going to hand this back to Garrett.
Yeah. We look at, we'll find, of course, top competitors. Typically, we'll either have clients self-ID competitors. We'll also take their top 100 keywords and see who's ranking consistently across those, and just take a peek at what they're doing, right? Like, what are they doing for, where are they already earning links? How are they earning links? And I don't mind this approach, but also I feel like there's some, it's tough to scale this approach from an agency perspective. So, but we do this sort of analysis to kind of learn, are there any audiences we've overlooked? And and that's a key question to ask from an agency perspective when we're thinking about content design. It's like, are there any unexpected audiences that are big fans of your service or products that you never would have thought of, and that you're not really serving yet with content? And that's a key question also. But yeah, this is where you're sort of looking around to see what others have done. I'm not a huge fan of copying competitors. I don't dislike it, but I'm also, and if there's something easy that's duplicatable, let's go and let's do it, But I think we don't spend too much time there. But the core thing is you can discover topics or content directions or even asset types that you wouldn't have considered otherwise. So it's useful, just like in an academic sense. If you're going into a new area of study, you need to read widely. You should definitely read and sort of research widely when it comes to what have our competitors done, and certainly just look at their homepage and poke around and look at them in Majestic, and you can look at their most linked pages to get an idea of what's been the most linked to, what's been the most cited document on their site, and then absolutely looking at social media to see what has caught fire, so to speak, in the social media that is your where your market lives. The one caveat here is that they're primarily, your competitors are looking at, just from a pure link building perspective, your competitors are probably focused on just in funnel link building. So they're leaving links on the table by not writing for other linker valued audiences or trying to discover other linker valued audiences. So that's one thing to kind of be aware of. But that's very, very obviously, if they're there, we're going to assume that if they pursued a link on a certain site, we're going to presume that there was a economic reason for that. There was some benefit to them. So it's definitely a very important place to look. Eric, can you talk a bit about from your angle, competitors link analysis, competitive link analysis?
Sure. Let me mention that thank you to the audience, because I know we've gone over, and it looks like we've retained almost 100% of the people that we had. So until that number dive bombs, I'm able to continue to go, and I'm thrilled that we've got people who are still out there listening. But to your question about repeat it again, just because what
do you do from a competitive perspective?
Oh, yeah,
competitive analysis.
I think it's one of the most widely made tactical mistakes. It's one tactic. It's important from a competitive intelligence perspective to know who's linking to all of your competitors, and more specifically, not just to their homepage, because anybody can figure out a way to get a link to their homepage, but to better understand, where are my competitors able to attract links within their content? What's resonating in their websites and generating links? However, I don't believe, the way I put it is, if you just chase the links your competitors already have, you're playing keep up with the Joneses. It's like you're running a marathon and they are continually 2 steps ahead of you. And as they get another new link and take another step, you get another link that they left behind for you, and you take another step, but you're still destined to always be behind them. And not that there's anything necessarily wrong with that, but that should only be one piece of an overall competitive linking strategy. My favorite approach, and I know it's counterintuitive, because most clients, when I ask the client, who's your competitors, and I ask it open-ended, I never say who's your Google competitors. I purposely ask who's your competitors, because all of them will always answer, well, everybody that's ranked ahead of me. And I'll tell them, oh, well, actually, the sites that are your competitors, sure, I agree with you, but the other sites that are your competitors are the sites that are ranked behind you. Well, why are they my competitors? Well, they're not standing still, and neither are Google's search results. And the site that's ranked 9th, even though you're ranked 4th, is the site that may end up ranked 3rd a month from now. So I call it the apple orchard approach. In other words, if you're ranked 6th, take every site in the top 15, run a backlink profile on every single one of them, and look at the best links that every single one of them has. Then put them into a big bucket. Don't worry about which of your competitors it was linking to, because I don't want your linking strategy to be driven by the guy that was ranked ahead of you or behind you. What we're saying is every apple tree is going to have some good apples and some bad apples, but we're going to take all 15 of those apple trees, all 15 of those competitors, and we're going to recognize that every tree is going to have some good, some bad, and some rotten. And what I want is I want the good that they all have. And now I want to go after as many of those as possible, not just targeting one. Because I know I'm going to be successful in some cases. Some I'm never going to get on because there was a pre-existing relationship that allowed for them to get that link in the first place. But what I'm saying here is if I get just 10% of the best links off every one of those 15 trees, collectively what I've got is now more powerful than any one of them, and I win.
And I want to add something here, because I do exactly what Eric and Garrett do. Most of the time I just say to my clients, work with them, they're the best. You learn opportunities. I can tell you right now, there is a missed opportunity that has been rampant in the medical and the healthcare industry. Doctors and healthcare professionals write for doctors and other healthcare professionals. They might have things for patients, but the audience they have overlooked are the patient caregivers. The youngest baby boomers are 51 years old, and a lot of them are taking care of elderly parents. Xers are taking care of elderly parents. This is an audience that's not going to disappear.
There's so much more than just link target. One of the probably most successful consults I ever had was with a California organic produce. You would know it if I said the name, but I don't. I mean, it was Earthbound Farm. Okay, so now that I've said it. Okay, so they're everywhere. They're in grocery stores all over the country. Now, let's go back a decade ago. It might even have been farther than that. We do a backlink analysis on this. And one of the things we learn in looking at one of their competitors' backlinks, we see a link to a trade show. I mean, there was a link to a .org, and that immediately is like, well, why has one of your competitors gotten a link from a .org? And then we look at this .org, and it's actually a grocery. It's a trade show. It's an industry-specific trade show, and it's in Georgia. And my client says, why the heck is my competitor? And the link was there because in this trade, on the trade show website in Georgia, for the Organic Grocery Manufacturers Association, for the Southeastern Grocery Manufacturers Association, they had paid to be a sponsor and exhibitor. And as a result of that, what did they have? They had a link on the trade show website, which showed up in the backlink analytics. So now my client, who does not market at all east of the Mississippi River, is saying, wait a minute. Why is one of our biggest competitors, they don't market east of the Mississippi, why are they sponsoring and exhibiting at a trade show in Georgia? Well, there can only be one reason. They're considering expansion. So by looking at the backlink profile of a competitor, they were able to learn, and it basically put it on their radar, wait a minute here, one of our competitors is actually spending money to have an exhibit. They're going to have to spend a ton of money to fly a staff out. They're paying to be in the exhibit hall, and they're going to be attending this trade show that's taking place in Atlanta, Georgia, which is a market we know they have never sold to before. How did we find that out? Backlink analysis. It wasn't a link opportunity for them. They didn't sell there, but what it told them was, holy crap, one of our competitors is about to expand east of the Mississippi. We need to meet and discuss this. And to me, that was like the most awesome bit of competitive intel that to me, that's why backlink intelligence can be so incredibly powerful, because it can tell you what your competitor is doing today and what they might be thinking about doing tomorrow.
Yes, and they are thinking, can I eat it? Will it eat me? Can I have sex with it, without realizing it?
Well, most organic produce is just horrible when it comes to sex. It's just no fun.
Yeah, it is. That would be a can I eat it example.
Okay,
So
that's what I'm. Thank you. Okay, thank you for clarifying, because now I understand why it's gone so bad for me with the organic produce.
exactly. So once we identify what our content assets are, who our target audience is, where are our link opportunities, we have to make that URL shareable and linkable. And
Oh, don't
just
get me
no,
started.
this is so usability centered because a URL is a document label, and document labels need to be human friendly as well as technology friendly. So Eric's going to take us through
Well,
what makes
yeah, I talk too much. Garrett, do you want to start, or do you want me to just kind of do an intro and turn it over to you?
Are you kidding me? This is
Okay.
this is home turf, Eric Ward home turf. Tell
Okay.
us.
Well,
No, no, no.
I'm going to start with my pet peeves. It's like,
Please.
and this is something that it goes back, and it still happens today. Um, URLs can be absolutely unshareable. And what I mean by that is the easiest answer is, first of all, don't make the mistake in thinking that everybody reads email using an HTML email reader. I, for one, do not. Uh, Although I choose my base level setting is I want to read my emails in text. Have you ever seen an URL break because it's so long in email, so that now you have to copy and paste two pieces of a URL together in a tiny quarter-inch window? That's not happening. That's a deal breaker. Unshareable, unclickable, not going to happen. So sometimes a URL can be too long. And that's just one example of an unshareable URL. Um, so, and Garrett, again, I don't want to dominate the conversation here. The other thing is, with the advent of social media, sometimes URLs can take up so many characters of a tweet or whatever that,
No.
and I know that Twitter's doing a better job of that because they also have their own URL shortener with Tico, but the reality is, in my personal opinion, the longer any URL is, that even if it is incredibly descriptive, the longer any URL is, there is a psychological bias in some cases against them, because a lot of people feel that, well, if content is truly epic and awesome and truly useful, wouldn't that content tend to be closer to the top level domain name? And even though I might argue with them that depending on the architecture that there are instances where the answer would be no, the reality is that I have seen over and over a bias against URLs that are too long. In other words, a URL can be so long it's unshareable. It can have characters in it that make it look like gibberish, that end up making it look like, gee, that might not be permanent. That almost looks like,
Right.
is that a
Right.
session ID? Is
I
that something
think
that's
that
going
is
to break
huge.
a
Yeah.
spider? That looks like a URL that's not going to be around forever? Is that a tracking URL? Or are they just trying to scam me
URL
into?
is the first impression that, well, almost, that someone has of your website, right? Before they click it, they're looking at it. And if this thing feels like it's going to break, right? If it feels rickety, is this going to be permanent? Why would I want to link to something that's going to move or not be there in 6 months? Now
Yeah,
I've
I
got to
mean,
go back and fix my website.
you might as well have a subdirectory that says these URLs, any URL beyond this point may not be here permanently.
All ye who enter will perish. Or
Yeah, I mean, it's like, and it's awkward too, because when when you're doing these consults with people, especially when you've got somebody else on the phone, the marketing team, the information guys, the guys that run the server, and especially if there's a guy in the meeting that actually came up with the site architecture and the naming. What's Sherry? The naming.
links.
Yeah, whatever their naming classification system was, and you see that it was not helpful from a linking standpoint. Now you're faced with that awkward question of saying, guys, I never want to actually say to them, man, somebody made a really asinine decision about your URL structure. I can't say that, but what I have to somehow convey to them is that they have hampered their ability to attract links by virtue of a decision they made about their site architecture and labeling.
Yeah, URL red flags. And I think another one would be on my end when I'm pitching to links and resource pages. Now, these are curators. These are people who are different from people who own and operate blogs. They have different reasons for publishing, right? Maybe say the similar audiences, but different reasons for publishing. If I'm a links and resource page curator, and I've got a collection of 50 of the best links on the internet about boating, let's say, and I see something, boating might not even be a great example, but let's boating, and something is on a blog. I'm not going to trust that as much as being an evergreen type of an evergreen document if it lives on, if the word blog is in the URL, right? Just in that string. That's going to turn me off. I'm looking for, your resources section or your education section.
I've seen worse than that, and since it's the Mayo Clinic, I'm a little bit more confident, but I've got to tell you that the tail end of that on the far right bothers me. That CON-2035101, that bugs me because that's
that's a tip though. This is called front loading, and for those of you who have been watching, we did link to a Marketing Land article that gives you some guidelines. Now, one of the things to do is something called front loading. You front load your URLs with your most important words. So what Mayo Clinic did well is they front loaded with their most important words, and they put the nonsense stuff at the end. So if you have a content management system that has to use the funky characters or the session IDs or the numbers that people don't understand, if you front load your URLs, you will, and also remember, this is going to appear, the URL appears in Google search results.
What do you guys think the CON stands for? Just out of curiosity. I mean, go back to that page real quick. Why did they do? What does CON stand for? I think it's something that means something only to people internally there. They didn't think of the end user. What does CON mean?
It was probably a technical person.
Is it conditions? Is it short for conditions?
It might be.
Yeah, so condition number 2035101.
Condition, yeah, like that would be.
But most people,
as a potential linker, I trust that more. Yeah.
Yeah, but you and I know that we've done this enough that we see CON and we think, oh, they must mean condition. But the casual user looking at that might not. Likewise, we got to hope that if we're building links for this page, we got to hope that they understand. I would rather that actually go. I mean, the URL's long enough. Go ahead and put condition. And why'd you have to give it a meaningless number? That it's like why not give me condition dash influenza? Why does it have to be 20035? Now, I understand that it may be too late, and I don't know that in this particular case it's an absolute deal breaker from a link building perspective, but for me personally, in a perfect world, I would want to make changes to that URL. I understand it's front-loaded well, it's back-loaded poorly.
Exactly, and that is something for all of you to think about before you purchase any kind of content management software. Having control of URLs, especially to your content assets, is going to be critical, and it's very critical for people who want to go directly to your content assets. So are there any other tips you guys can offer of making a URL shareable and a URL unshareable?
I think trustable is another good way to think about shareability. Do I trust this URL? And I think a lot about the inbox, right? Like, because that's kind of the first encounter that a potential linker has oftentimes with your domain or with. So I think about trustability in the URL, and it's a granular place to work, but folks, I believe it has impact, and I think kind of picking your audience and thinking clearly ahead of time about who your target linking audience or sharing audience is going to be should play into the URLs that you're creating. So if you're going after links and resource page folks, then the blog isn't going to be great. But if you're going after bloggers, if you're working with bloggers and industry folks in your industry, there's nothing wrong with a blog being in the URL. Right?
And some CMS systems even recognize what we're talking about. Especially, I mean, you look at WordPress and the various flavors of WordPress. There's a reason when you're creating a new document that it has the ability to let you edit the permalink up there. It's almost like it knows that, gosh, this guy just wrote an article and his headline has 9 words, which means 9 dashes, because the default setting for that CMS is it's going to use every word of your article title in the URL path, and most people don't want that because now it's a really ridiculously long URL. That's why it even has the ability right up there to edit that down to something however you want to. I went through this just within this past week. I rarely use the default URL path that WordPress wants to give me. I'm thinking from this standpoint of what will make this most apparent to an end user who might only see the URL itself and have to make a decision about what that content might be behind it.
And also consider the shorter the URL, the better. Search engines want the shortest URL possible that communicates aboutness. And I just highlighted on this page we're giving you as a resource, you don't have a lot of screen real estate on a mobile device.
Oh, goodness.
Don't waste space. That's important to users. So I highly encourage all of you to read this. Again, it has a URL checklist, and it also warns you could be preventing access to your URLs by robots exclusion, by orphaning, siloing, and using technologies that could really affect your URL. So this is a good checklist.
Shari, I want to commend you for actually speaking the word siloing without retching.
So
normally when Shari says the word siloing, it's followed up by the sound of her vomiting.
And you can hear teeth gritting.
And you can hear it in the back. Actually, you can hear her beating the walls with her hands.
I took my medication before I did this.
Good. Glad to hear that.
I'm going to tell all of you this right now because we're going to move on to the next part of this. So again, here's your helpful links. Is where do these shareable links live? This is architecture, and where do you place them on your website? And I'm going to tell you a resource. It's called Information Architecture for the World Wide Web. I have a screenshot of it. And in that book, it is said for years and years and years, silos do not add to findability. They actually decrease it. And I'm going to show you how to fix that. So now we don't need any antacids anymore. So where am I? The three things I'm going to show are the types of website navigation that every website should have except the smallest of the small sites. And again, Information Architecture for the World Wide Web is one of my Bibles. And just so you know, you're probably going to know more by the end of this presentation than most SEOs on the planet, because search engine optimizers and software developers and computer programmers are not taught architecture and navigation. They assume they know it. And that's not a good thing, because we all know that your target audience does not have the same mental models as your technical team. I'm going to show you where to put the digital content assets, and I'm going to show you some common mistakes. So let's review. Information architecture, organizing, labeling, and connecting website to support usability and findability. In other words, the goal of information architecture, make your content easy to use, easy to find. Information architecture should be based on user mental models, not the mental models of your technical team, not the mental models of your marketing team, not your mental model, and that's really hard.
Not what's easiest for you.
Exactly. It's based on your users. Information architecture precedes technical architecture. So you should have your labeling system set up before you launch your website. So if you're adding content assets as an afterthought, you're already behind. This is something you should do before. Keep in mind the definition of site architecture is information architecture plus technical architecture. And as I said, most web developers and SEO professionals, unfortunately, are not trained or educated. But I'm here to help everyone. So this is what happens if you don't address architecture. As Nielsen said, 77% of task completion failures is due to architecture. If you catch it early in the design phase, as Eric mentioned earlier, with prototypes, you're good as gold. If you wait till the developers started coding, it's not as good, but it's not as bad as waiting till after the site's launched. Just know that as the general rule, if you can do this before the site is launched, you are way ahead of the game. So the good news is that I'm showing you what to do. There are 5 types of website navigation: global, local, contextual, and supplemental. Utilities usually is where login lives, a link to your home page, about us, help, FAQs. That's what, and cart is usually in your utilities menu. People expect to see that in the upper left-hand corner. Global navigation is usually the navigation bar you see at the top, as well as your fat footer at the bottom. Local navigation gets more specific. So your labels should get more specific as people go down your hierarchy. They typically appear on the left side of the page. They can appear on the right side of the page. And sometimes they appear directly below global navigation, which we see on mobile devices. Contextual links and supplemental links are so powerful, and I'm telling you right now, contextual links and supplemental links will make or break your search engine visibility and your site usability. So here are your recommended readings. Fantastic books. They are signed copies, and they're very well loved in my Shari's personal bookshelf. These are the links that will make or break. I'm not saying that global and local links aren't important. Of course they are, but I would expect people to use card sorting and reverse card sorting usability tests to determine global and local navigation. It's contextual and supplemental navigation that carry heavy, heavy, heavy weight when search engines, as well as users, determine aboutness of your site and the unique content fingerprint of all of your digital assets. So context is the kingdom. It is true, content is king, but you have to show people how to link to your content. And you've always got to put your content in context. And as long as it's in context constantly, you're going to have better search engine traffic, you're going to have better sense of information, and you're going to have better conversions. So tip number one, always put your links in context. Navigation labels should be clear from users' perspective. Some contextual links can be programmed, and some contextual links should be curated. I'm going to give you some examples. Okay, so here's Marketing Land. Eric, what page am I viewing? What section of the site am I in? Whose site am I in?
Analytics and conversion.
Right. Whose site am I visiting?
I got lucky.
Yes, you are. Yes, it's a link, so they did a good job. Whose site am I viewing?
Marketing Land, but only because I know that.
Right. Okay, that's fine. Which section of Marketing Land are you in? Analytics and conversion. How can you?
Only because of that ridiculously small analytics and conversion label above the search box.
Can you tell us where does analytics and conversion live? Under MarTech, CMO, social, SEM, SEO? That's a mistake.
It better live under analytics.
It better live under analytics, and analytics should be highlighted. So that is something that everybody should know. Within 0.5 seconds, people determine where am I. And if it takes them longer than 0.5 seconds when they look at a web page to determine where am I, you are slowing down task completion. So always, always tell your users in your site navigation and in your content labels, including your URL as a document label, where am I? And what is this content about?
I'm guilty of that on my own site, man. Bad.
Everybody's guilty. There's no such thing as a perfect site, but just know this. So this site did okay. That's why I picked it, because it's a very search engine land and marketing land rank constantly, and they do a lot of things right. So let's see some of the things that they did right. Now, I have a pet peeve, and this is not only do I have hissy fits, and hissy fit is a gentle way of saying rah, 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 siloing actually does not make your content more findable. Anytime you hear the term internal site architecture, you're dealing with a person who doesn't know what they're talking about. Internal site architecture means site navigation. Duh. Okay. Another thing to know is that there is a term called inline or embedded text links that carry heavy information sent. So whenever you write a blog post, whenever you write any kind of content that's link worthy, try to use relevant inline text links and use them sparingly because you want your content to be easy to read. Garrett, first link, technology-based users. What page do you think you're going to find? You're going to click on this link. Tell me what you expect to see.
Only from picking up context such as search engines, I'm looking at the crawler access, I think.
Exactly. And guess what? That was a very appropriate link. Like I said, normally in an expectancy test, you wouldn't tell people what you expect to see. Another inline text link. Eric, what would you expect to see by clicking on this link?
Hopefully something written by Jared Smith.
Exactly. So not only is there context in the inline text link, there's context next to the inline text link. So everybody, use inline text links sparingly but appropriately. They provide the best context to both search engines and users. And notice,
let's remember Google also has a patent on adjacency.
Exactly. And actually all search engines right now, the major web search engines do have patents. So do this, curated inline text links. And again, don't forget usability. The longer the article, let's say it's a blog post, the more inline text links you can put in because you have content. The shorter the article, the less inline text links you can use. These are curated text links. The author should be the one adding the inline text links. There is another type of text link called related. And as long as they're topically specific, you will also gain a lot of value from these. So in WordPress, you can add related blog posts. So again, this is something that the author or a topic authority should be picking. So make sure you use inline text links and make sure you have related relevant articles. Don't link to something that's unrelated in the curated part of your website. Programmable contextual links, for example, might be most popular and also most recent. Again, these are things that you commonly see programmed into WordPress, Magento, Drupal, all kinds of other things. Now look at these links. Are they contextual? What does procrastination and tongue problems have to do with each other? What does Cyber Monday, and these are things, this one's from CNN, Cyber Monday. Isn't Cyber Monday over?
Oh, I hate that. Oh man, so many sites do that, stuff that's old.
So keep in mind, one of the things that Garrett and Eric put is your site needs to be evergreen as much as possible. It's okay to have linkable content that's timely, but keep in mind that might have a short lifespan. And another thing I want to point out is when we do usability tests, as much as designers hate this, the blue looks more clickable than the black. We tend to find people clicking the graphic image more than clicking on the black link. So make sure your links look clickable. So yes, you can have these, but don't put them front and center. If you're going to put something front and center, put your related posts and your inline text links first on a web page. If you're going to add programmable ones, make sure they appear after the content and after those other type of links.
Cool. Excellent.
Here's another issue. So here's CNN again. Do any of you know Newt the polar bear? Newt the polar bear, my niece loves Newt the polar bear. Now, Newt the polar bear passed away, unfortunately, and they found out the reason he passed away was genetic reasons. But look at what they put more from CNN. What does Bill Cosby have to do with Newt the polar bear?
I think he slipped the polar bear a roofie.
Oh, there you go. What is Star Wars? Is there going to be a polar bear in the Star Wars movie?
Ironically, the line there is, please stop forcing Star Wars on me. And it is a little bit forced here, though.
And just so you know, do those links look clickable?
No.
So they're not encouraging people to click on these links. So none of these links are contextual, and none of these links are formatted to encourage people to click on it. So this is why you have to watch out for what people say and what software, out-of-the-box software does, because they're putting things on your web pages that distract people from completing their tasks and distract people from linking to your digital assets. So this leads to my second tip. Any of you that use WordPress, this is a no. I'm going to ask Eric, what do you expect to see when you click on 2014 in January? What topic do you expect to see?
What topic?
Yes. Okay, Eric just gave the classical WTF expression that I see in usability tests all of the time. Well, WTF, pardon my language, it means what the fuck.
I'm gonna expect to see the topic of stuff that they wrote in February of 2014.
People don't click on these links because they have no context. So don't use archiving software. The people who created the archiving software did not create them to provide context. So if you're going to use the archiving software, use it in a category page. So at least you have January. This is the recipes for January 2015. At least there's some context rather than this nonsense that you see right here. The other thing not to do, don't do tagging. And that might seem so counterintuitive to what a lot of people recommend, but to a search engine, tagged content, tagged links is duplicate content. And that's what search engines don't want, is duplicate content. Now, if you find people like to use your tagging pages, then you're going to have to manage your duplicate content. And now you have to hire a technical SEO to help you filter out the content you want to deliver to search engines and the content that you don't want to deliver to search engines. And just so you know, people don't click on tag clouds. I've been usability testing since 2002, and as a navigation option, tagging is not something that users click on. So just don't use it.
Hey guys, I hate to do this again, but I got about 15 minutes to pick up Noah. He gets his braces off today.
Hey!
So, Garrett, are you good handling anything as related to links from this point on?
I'll do my. I'm not sure I'll be able to handle witticisms, but anything link related, I'll try, Eric. I'll do my best.
All right. Good for you. First,
for,
Eric is got to see this because he's going to love this. Do not silo your digital assets. This is what people do all the time. They create a links and resources section right here, and then they put all their digital assets in one place. Okay, let's say accidentally you put a bad link in there. Guess what the Google spam team and the Bing spam team does? They can cut off this entire branch just like that. And it happens all the time. So I'm saying if you want to have link assets on a link resources section, you can, but you have to continue to have, I'm going to go back to it, contextual navigation. If you have contextual navigation, you will get rid of the silo problem. I'm going back to it. So don't just silo. Make sure you have links to your supplemental navigation as well to prevent the siloing effect. So what do I mean by supplemental navigation? A sitemap, and by sitemap I don't mean an XML sitemap. I mean a Wayfinder sitemap. The larger your site, the more likely you're going to need a site index instead of a sitemap. And the golden child of all of this are guides. Guides are linkable assets, and people do love to link to them. Let's look at some good supplemental navigation examples. Here's one that's a guide. Think about, can I eat it? Will it eat me? Can I have sex with it? This is safety. Will it eat me? Parents love guides to helping their children. People who are buying television mounts, they want to know, can I mount my TV on the wall? Can I mount my TV on the ceiling? What kind should I get? Guide to selecting the right wall mount for your TV is a linkable asset. Make these front and center. And what I love about this is they've made the ability to share very easy because they put the links at the top. It doesn't have to be in this format, but it's very easy to share. They do have contextual links, which are fantastic, so they're not siloing. So keep that in mind. The bigger the site, the more you're going to need to use guides. And also, the bigger the site, the more you're going to need a site index. And all this is
Shari, I'm sorry to interrupt. Will you go back? Because I want to make one quick note about this. So
Sure.
Top left, look at this. This is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about establishing and demonstrating authority. And we've been here. We've done this before with this type of content on this topic. That top left kind of giving me a sense of depth of diabetes-related resources. It's just astounding. This is absolutely, I'm going to be much more likely as a linker, much more likely to link to this page, assuming I have a, I have a section on my links and resource page that's about, that's for parents or that's kid-related. This is not only is the title spot on and the content looks great, but then I also have a sense of depth and a sense of these guys are here on this topic for this topic. This is the real deal. Publisher, gosh, I can't believe I never found these guys before. Of course I'm going to add a link. Thank you.
Exactly. And just because they don't have a lot of sharing doesn't mean that people don't link to something. Remember,
right.
Social sharing is not a ranking factor. Link development is, and it's going to continue to be.
Stuff doesn't get shared. Sharing audiences on social media and linking audiences on links and resource pages are very different and have very different requirements, content requirements that get them to take action. So I'll say that too. Lack of shares, to me, doesn't indicate lack of linkability.
Exactly, and this has the green check mark. So this is a to-do to your website. So make sure you have guides. And if you have an e-commerce site, guide to selecting is something that's very important to people. So again, make sure you have this. So guides are a goldmine. A site index, it can also be a goldmine. And the reason I'm showing you this site is you can actually go to this site and just copy what they've done. They've done an extraordinary job. Look what they've done. They spell out what their abbreviations mean. Everything here looks clickable. ABCs, context, ABCs. What do you think of when you hear ABCs? A, B, C, D, E, F, G. They provided context immediately next to it. They provided cross-references. They provided synonyms. And if somebody can't find something, they have a search box that at least allows for 30 characters. And what items are included? Can I suggest a new entry? These are things that help people find things, and these are things that help technology determine the aboutness of your pages. And so site indexes and guides are some of the most overlooked content wayfinders. And if you can add this, you will help get rid of the siloing effect and make your site far more user-friendly and far more better conversions. Tip number 5, do not use XML sitemaps, and I use that as one word, as band-aids for information architecture and navigation. Just because Google can access content doesn't mean it understands your content. So you do have to provide document labels, which are titles and URLs. You have to provide navigation labels, and you have to provide content labels such as headings and subheadings to communicate what the content is about. XML sitemaps are supplemental navigation, and they're for technology only. They're not for humans. So make sure you have Wayfinder sitemaps as well as XML sitemaps if you need to have an XML sitemap. So here are some helpful links about website navigation. I love this site, wheelie.com. I also like Yahoo's pattern library to give you ideas of what things should and should not look like. So, you know, unfortunately, Eric had to leave. I wanted to do some key takeaways. Would you like to go first, Garrett? What would you want people to remember? What are three things you want people to remember?
I think first and foremost is I would like, my hope is that people got a glimpse of a vision for a more effective way to organize your linkable assets. And I don't mean all of your content. Not every piece of content that you ever write for your website are you trying to build links to, or should it be designed to have links built to it. It should certainly be shareable, but not everything is created with a linking audience in mind. But that single slide that Shari showed, where it gave the visitor to that page a sense of depth of topic, of that there's more than one article on this website about type 1 diabetes. That is a page that a linker is going to hit and say, these guys know what they're talking about, without really having to read very much. You're making it easy for them to trust you and to trust your website and to trust that adding a link is going to benefit their visitors. That is, you know, I can't really quite put a nutshell around that, but if I could, that is the core kind of takeaway that I wanted our listeners to this webinar to have, is that the content can't be, you know, kind of just thrown out there. It shouldn't be bolted on. It needs to be thought through. Ideally, as Shari mentioned, before your site goes up, right? You're thinking about who your potential linkers are. You're thinking about your linker valued audiences. How do the audiences call themselves? Not just what do we call them? They don't call themselves buyers or consumers, probably. They may have names for themselves, and we should be respectful of that and learn what those are, so we can, you know, better fit in. So I guess that would be kind of a number two is, if and when possible, plan for link building ahead of time. I know it's usually the last thing, but if you can do it first, right? Or when you're designing a website, when you're at the site redesign stage, that's when you start to think about, that's when you do all your research, when you do your prospecting, when you look for who are our link targets, who is linking to our competitors. I really liked Eric's idea of taking your top 15 and looking at the co-citations and cherry picking the top, or Apple picking the top 10% from each site. Really neat idea. But that's when you do all this research and do all this work to understand your market, not just your market, but the linking market that exists, who you're trying to create content for. So if I had to, I guess the third takeaway would be, and this is the kind of the epiphany for me when I realized that what Shari's impact could potentially be on thinking through, you know, how does linkable content actually, how should it live on a website, is just that URL structure. And we have recognized that we're more likely to get a link from a links and resource page from a curator, from a person who maintains that page on the website, you know, gov, edu, libraries, the authorities out there on the internet. We're more likely to get a link when the word blog is not in the URL. And I would have clients ask me, where should we put this document? And I had no clue, other than I knew to say, don't necessarily put it on your blog. And this is why I wanted us to have this webinar, and why I'm so excited to be working with Shari. Now, that's not necessarily a takeaway, but certainly I'm just trying to illustrate why this is important, why why site navigation and site structure are so important, why the links on the page, why your on-site or internal linking approach is so important as well. And Shari used the word curated links quite a bit, and I think that when you're curating the links, the related content links for your linkable assets, that's going to be at the sort of a minimal step forward in thinking through how can we better establish authority through usability for our potential linkers. So that's
exactly.
probably
And
more than 3 things, but Shari, what are your 3?
My 3 things are actually what we all intended at the goal of the webinar. You know you have to have content assets on your site, so number 1, you do have to plan. If you're doing it as an afterthought, at least you're doing something, and I commend you for that, but in the future, plan. What digital assets do you need? Who do you create them for? Understand why you're creating them. Don't do a YouTube channel if your target audience doesn't use YouTube. Don't do infographics that are huge, because the point of an infographic is to make a point quickly and easily. So understand your audience, plan ahead. Number 2, where do we place them? We place these links. We definitely put them in contextual and supplemental navigation, and do a good job at it. Don't let the software do it for you. Use curation, but if you're using the software development, the stuff the software developers came up with, then at least put them at the end, because they're not as important as the contextual links. And finally, when do we place them on a website? Place them once you have everything planned. Know what your URL structure is, know what your audience likes, have a calendar when you're going to launch your linkable assets, and above all, make it easy for them to access. So I know we went long, and we go along because we want you to get as much information as possible. So I hope we gave you that information. We are making this available. Megan, we're going to make this available. When are we going to make this available for everybody?
We're uploading it to our YouTube channel today, and it should be on the Citation Labs blog tomorrow at the latest.
So, and if you have any questions, at the end it gives us our content information. Please feel free to ask us anything you like, and if we can help you, we will. So we're up to the hour.
Shari, thank you.
And thank you guys.
Yeah, awesome.
And again, I hope we helped everybody. And if, again, anybody has any questions, let us know.
Thanks.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Megan. I'm going to go ahead. Who needs to
I'll end the webinar. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Megan.